On the day I experienced bleeding 3 months into my pregnancy, Scarlett was driving me to the hospital when we were involved in a car accident. I lost my child, and Scarlett lost the ability to walk. After that, my husband Ethan spent over 6 months caring for her. "Mun, we owe her this," he would often say. Over time, Scarlett became an unavoidable presence in our lives. Later, another accident almost cost me my life. On the brink of death, I made one last call to Ethan, but he hung up on me. When I was reborn, I resolved to help them achieve their wishes. Scarlett, seated in her wheelchair, smiled at me with a slight curve of her lips. "Mon, you owe me this," she said, rolling toward the staircase. Just like before, she was performing her theatrics. In 3 seconds, she would accidentally fall and claim that I pushed her. In my past life, I might have tolerated her schemes out of guilt, thinking I was to blame for her injuries. After all, she was taking me to the hospital when the accident happened. But this time, before she could carry out her act, I shoved the wheelchair down the stairs with her in it. Using all my strength, I pushed harder than her staged tumble would have allowed. Scarlett screamed as she tumbled down the steps, her body rolling awkwardly. I raised an eyebrow in mock surprise, then quickly composed myself. Walking over, I looked down at her sprawled on the floor and sneered. "Scarlett, I didn't realize you were such a great actress." Scarlett's expression turned panicked. "I don't know what you're talking about," she stammered. I smirked. The unexpected makes things more entertaining. "Let's take our time and play this game." Hearing the noise, Ethan rushed over. Scooping Scarlett into his arms, he asked worriedly, "Scarlett, are you okay?" Scarlett cried pitifully. "Brother Ethan, it hurts so much. I don't know what I did wrong, but Mun pushed me." Ethan stared at me in disbelief. "Mun, are you out of your mind? If Scarlett hadn't tried to save you back then, she wouldn't be like this." "Save me," I replied coldly, walking up to him and delivering a hard slap. "Thank you and your entire family, just because she says I pushed her. That makes it true? Call the police if you have the guts." In my previous life, Scarlett had chosen the perfect spot to frame me. A place without security cameras, ensuring minimal harm to herself. Ethan stood frozen, shocked by my reaction. "Ethan, let's get divorced. Bring your documents tomorrow, and I'll meet you at the Civil Affairs Bureau," I said, before walking away without a backward glance. This was just the beginning. We still had plenty of accounts to settle. Ethan and I had grown up together. In 3rd grade, Scarlett and her mother moved into our neighborhood, turning our duo into a trio. Initially, Ethan couldn't stand Scarlett and avoided her at all costs. But Scarlett followed us everywhere. During study sessions, on the way to and from school, and even to basketball games. Over time, Ethan softened, going from tolerating her presence to willingly including her. When Ethan and I entered the same university, we naturally became a couple in our junior year. Scarlett, who had lower grades, attended a nearby school. Yet, she continued to tag along on our dates, sometimes through video calls when she couldn't join in person. Ethan even started buying her identical gifts to those he gave me. "You're quite fair," I teased him. "Scarlett's had a tough life," Ethan replied. "She's never known her father. If only he'd known her mother would later take his father away. I wonder if he'd still think she was pitiful." 2 months after our wedding, Scarlett moved into our home, claiming it was more convenient for her job. Out of affection for Ethan, I treated Scarlett like a sister, sharing everything with her. I never realized she had feelings for Ethan until after we were married. and I became pregnant. One evening, I felt sharp pain in my lower abdomen. Ethan was on a business trip, so Scarlett drove me to the hospital. On the way, we had an accident. I lost my baby, and Scarlett's legs were injured. When Ethan returned, he held my hand and said, "Man, we can have another baby, but Scarlett will never walk again. We owe her." After my discharge, I wanted to help care for Scarlett, but she refused to see me. She threw tantrums, broke things, and threatened to end her life. Exhausted, Ethan suggested, "Mun, why don't you stay at your mum's for now? Scarlett needs time to calm down." From then on, only Ethan and Scarlett lived in the house we once shared. Ethan became her constant companion, while I endured my loss in silence, unable to voice my pain. On Scarlett's birthday, she invited me back to our home for the first time. Hopeful that she had forgiven me, I brought gifts and flowers. But instead of a warm welcome, I walked into one of Scarlett's cruel performances. As she staged her fall, I instinctively reached for Ethan's hand. "Believe me, it wasn't me," I pleaded. But Ethan, cradling Scarlett in his arms, looked at me with disappointment. "Moon, I know you're upset with me, but how could you hurt her like this?" What could I say? What was there left for me to do? Later, while driving home, I received a chilling call from Scarlett. "Mun, Ethan is mine. Don't think about taking him away. Find someone better in your next life," she said before hanging up. Suddenly, my brakes failed, and a truck sped toward me. Amid screeching tires and blaring horns, I lost consciousness. I don't know how long I drifted before hearing someone desperately calling my name, begging me to wake up. But I couldn't. Regret flooded me. I had wasted my life on Ethan, neglecting my parents, who would be devastated by my death. As my spirit hovered over the scene, I saw a young firefighter risking his life to pull me from the wreckage. "Stop! Don't endanger yourself for a corpse," I shouted. Though he couldn't hear me, a sudden gust carried me away. When I opened my eyes again, I found myself at home, watching Ethan gently carry Scarlett to bed. Timidly, she grabbed his hand and whispered, "Ethan, don't leave." "I'm scared," Scarlett said softly, as Ethan reached out to stroke her hair, his gaze full of tenderness. "Scarlett, I'm sorry. I don't want you to apologize." Scarlett responded quickly. "You've never done anything wrong to me. Mun didn't mean it. Please forgive her." But a flicker of anger appeared in Scarlett's eyes. Suddenly, she wrapped her arms around Ethan's neck and kissed him. Startled, Ethan pushed her away instinctively. "Scarlett, I've always seen you as a sister," he stammered. "But we're not related by blood," she replied, her voice trembling. "Ethan, I've loved you since I was a child." Scarlett's uneasy and longing gaze slowly filled with tears. "You said you'd make things right for me," she continued. "Please, Ethan, let me love you." Ethan froze, his expression conflicted. Under the soft glow of the room's warm light, I could see his emotions shift: hesitation, guilt, and eventually, something deeper. He swallowed hard, then suddenly cupped the back of Scarlett's head and kissed her back. As her hands rested on his shoulders, Scarlett closed her eyes, a triumphant smile playing at the corners of her lips. The next morning, Ethan left for work. Scarlett lay in bed, her face radiant as she replayed the events of the previous night. Her daydreaming was interrupted by a phone call. "Is the target taken care of? No evidence left behind, right? Both the person and the car are gone?" "Perfect," Scarlett said, her voice laced with excitement. as though the news brought her immense joy. "I'll transfer the money to you right away." After hanging up, Scarlett grinned smugly. Rising from bed, she began to dance with abandon. Her movements wild and alluring, her eyes filled with a malicious glee. It was as if she had finally unleashed the darkness she had hidden for so long. "Sorry, Mon," Scarlett murmured. "I didn't want to do this, but I had no choice. I thought, if I took your baby away and drove you out of this house, Ethan would come back to me. But he just kept pleading for you, begging me to forgive you. The more he did, the angrier I got. Only if you vanish completely will Ethan forget you and truly be mine." Ha 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 ha. I observed her madness with a cold, detached stare. How much malice had been festering beneath the guise of her paralysis all this time. Now that I had been reborn, I knew what was coming. According to the timeline of my previous life, Scarlett's next move would be the call that threatened my life. Sure enough, my phone rang. It was Scarlett. "Mun, Ethan belongs to me. Stop dreaming about taking him from me." "Really?" I replied nonchalantly. "Because Ethan just begged me to reconcile with him. If I agree, you'll have no chance. What should we do about that?" Before she could respond, I ended the call. I gathered all my important documents, placed them in my bag, and turned to face the wedding photo on the wall above the bed. Dressed in a white wedding gown, I was smiling sweetly in the picture. But now, a pang of sorrow twisted my heart. The happiness I had believed in was nothing more than a lie I had chosen to live. I recalled the day of the wedding photo shoot. Ethan had arrived 2 hours late. When he finally showed up with Scarlett, she had said with a smile, "Sister Mun, I'm so sorry. I couldn't find the dress I liked, so Brother Ethan helped me get another one. That's why we're late. You don't mind, do you? I just wanted to wear my favorite dress to witness this special moment for you two." Looking back, the signs had been everywhere. I had just been too blind to see them. The front door opened, pulling me from my thoughts. Ethan rushed in, his face lit with excitement. "Mun, I don't agree to the divorce," he declared. I stared coldly at the man I had loved for so many years. "It doesn't matter whether you agree or not. I've already hired a lawyer. He'll handle the details." Ethan's expression fell. "How could you change so much? You've really let me down." His words amused me. "Ethan, I'm the one who should feel disappointed," I retorted. Turning away, I added, "Move out with Scarlett as soon as possible. That house belongs to my parents. They bought it for me before we got married." Ethan froze, but quickly shifted to his usual loving husband. "De Menor. Moon, don't be angry. You know I love you. I've been helping you pay off debts all this time," he said. "Should I thank you for manipulating me into losing myself? Or for driving me out of my own home?" I interrupted, my tone sharp. Ethan's face darkened. "You've really changed, Mon. You're not the gentle, obedient person you used to be." "No, I'm not. And I don't want to be," I replied firmly. "You can leave now." When I shook off his hand, his frustration boiled over. Pinning me to the bed, he said, "Mun, calm down. I know you're upset. Let's work this out, okay?" I struggled to push him away, but he was too strong. Panicking, I grabbed the glass of water on the bedside table, ready to hit him. At that moment, the door swung open. "Ethan, could you help me?" Scarlett's voice broke the tension. She froze in the doorway, her expression shifting from shock to rage. Ethan immediately jumped up, looking flustered. I adjusted myself, sat up, and said calmly, "Scarlett, you should knock before entering our room. Couples can do anything in their private space, and barging in like this might scare Ethan. You're not a child anymore. You should understand that." Ethan's frustration had no outlet, and he snapped at Scarlett. "Next time, knock first." Scarlett's face turned various shades of red and white before she finally gritted out, "I'm sorry. I'll be more careful." Taking advantage of Ethan being momentarily distracted by Scarlett, I straightened my clothes, suppressed my disgust, and left the room. Passing by the garage, I glanced at my car, knowing Scarlett had already tampered with it. The vivid memory of the car accident from my previous life flashed in my mind, making my heart pound. My body trembled uncontrollably, and sweat coated my palms as I stood frozen in front of the car, unable to move my legs. Suddenly, a teenager darted out from around the corner, blocking my path and panting heavily. "Moon, don't drive this car!" he exclaimed, his voice carrying the urgency of fear. I stared at him, bewildered. "Who are you? How do you know my name? Have we met before?" Before he could answer, the commotion from the house startled him. He turned abruptly and ran off. Snapping out of my daze, I didn't waste any more time. I flagged down a taxi and left immediately. There was something crucial I needed to do, and I couldn't afford to miss it. As the taxi pulled away, I glanced in the rearview mirror and saw the teenager watching the car drive off. He seemed relieved before disappearing from sight. I racked my brain for any memories of him, but couldn't recall anything. Yet his voice sounded oddly familiar, making my heart race as I tried to place it. Forget it, I thought. Perhaps he was someone Scarlett hired to sabotage the car, but had second thoughts and decided to warn me instead. I stopped at a nearby cafe, pulled out my phone, and checked the surveillance footage from home. I wanted to see what Scarlett had slipped into Ethan's glass. Sure enough, Scarlett, provoked by recent events, couldn't resist making a move. She rolled her wheelchair up to Ethan and handed him the glass with a sweet smile. "Ethan, drink some water and stop thinking about it. Mum isn't worth all this effort from you." Ethan drank the water without hesitation, while Scarlett's face lit up with satisfaction. Her schemes this time were even more revolting than in my previous life. "I feel like watching a movie," Scarlett said coyly. "Can you help me to the sofa?" Ethan bent down, carefully lifted her, and placed her on the couch. But Scarlett didn't let go of his neck, holding him close. "Ethan, I've loved you since I was a child. I love you so much, it hurts." The drug in the water seemed to take effect, and Ethan, much like before, responded to her advances. The sight disgusted me, but I waited a little longer in the cafe before making a few calls to their parents. After putting away my phone, I headed back home to watch the drama unfold. Scarlett's mother was the first to arrive, followed closely by Ethan's father. Scarlett's mother, who had long desired to marry Ethan's father after his wife's death, had been planning their wedding for months. Seeing her daughter's reckless behavior now infuriated her. The two parents froze in shock at the scene before them, unsure how to react. "What are you standing there for? Go in!" Ethan's father exclaimed, pushing Scarlett's mother aside to enter the room. The couple, startled by the intrusion, jumped apart and frantically searched for their clothes. "Scarlett, your legs!" Ethan stammered, his voice full of disbelief as he noticed her standing. The realization hit him like a thunderbolt. Scarlett panicked. "Ethan, let me explain." Slap! Ethan's father delivered a stinging blow to his son's face, silencing him. "You disgusting creature!" he roared. You knew I was about to marry Scarlett's mother, yet you behave like this. Father, I've loved Ethan since I was a child. Please let us be together, Scarlett pleaded, tears streaming down her face. You selfish girl, Scarlett's mother cried out. If you're with Ethan, what happens to me and his father? Scarlett's expression darkened. Mom, shut up. You have no right to blame me. If you hadn't seduced Ethan's father and driven his mother to her death, Ethan and I would have been together long ago. Scarlett's mother, trembling with rage, clutched her chest and collapsed to the floor. Ethan's father quickly called for an ambulance. Ethan, still reeling, turned to see me standing at the door. His face twisted in panic. Mun, clap, clap, clap. I slowly applauded, leaning against the doorframe. This scene is better than anything on TV. Mun, let me explain. Ethan rushed toward me, reaching out, but I sidestepped and approached Scarlett instead. Slap. This is for my lost child. Slap. And this is for myself. Scarlett was stunned, unable to react as I turned and walked out. When I returned home, I told my parents everything that had happened. My mother broke down in tears. Moon, when you moved back in, I knew something was wrong. You said you missed us, but I never imagined you'd endured so much pain. That scumbag hurt my daughter. I won't let him get away with it. My father bellowed, smashing his teacup. True to his word, my father severed all ties with Ethan's family and even blacklisted them in the business world. The resulting financial strain caused Ethan's company to collapse. Ethan called me repeatedly, but I ignored every attempt. A few months later, I saw him outside a bar. He was unrecognizable, gaunt, pale, with unkempt hair and a scruffy beard. Mon, I'm sorry. I don't know why things turned out that way, he said, his voice shaky. I coldly pulled my arm from his grasp. Your life is no longer my concern. Please, Ethan whispered, his eyes full of sorrow. Give me another chance. We're divorced, Ethan. There's nothing left between us. Tears filled his eyes as he clung to my arm, begging for forgiveness. At that moment, a strong hand intervened, pulling me free. Ethan, didn't you hear her? She told you to let go, said a tall, familiar figure who stood protectively between us. Later, Ethan tried multiple times to win me back, showing up at my home with flowers. But I sent him away each time. Even Ethan's father visited me. Despite his flaws, he had always been kind to me, often scolding Ethan when we were children. Out of respect for him as an elder, I listened to what he had to say. I allowed him to step inside. Ethan's father glanced around the room, visibly relaxing once he noticed my parents weren't present. With a casual smile, he spoke bluntly. Ethan just made a mistake. One all men make. It's nothing serious. As his wife, you should learn to be more forgiving. If you give Ethan another chance, I'll ensure Scarlett never shows up in your life again. I didn't respond, so he continued. Mon, I've watched you grow up. I know how much you love Ethan. Back in school, you were always running after him. Now that you're finally married, are you willing to let Ethan's future fall apart over this? I stayed silent, sipping tea, as my stomach churned at his words. How had I not realized in my previous life just how repulsive this entire family was? Seeing my lack of reaction, Ethan's father moved closer, but I immediately stood up. His smile faded. Mon, I always thought you were a kind-hearted girl who loved Ethan deeply. I'm so disappointed in you. Without hesitation, I turned to the staff nearby and said, Please show our guest out. At that moment, my father appeared in the doorway, accompanied by security guards. He strode in confidently and instructed them to escort Ethan's father out. Once the door shut, my father approached me, his expression grave. "Mun, I've already handed over the evidence, and the man Scarlett hired to tamper with your car to the police. He's confessed that Scarlett paid him to carry out the sabotage." The face of the young man who had warned me flashed in my mind, and I sighed. What a waste of such a handsome young man going astray. But mistakes must have consequences. My father's voice softened as he continued. The police also uncovered something else. The car accident that claimed your child wasn't an accident. It was orchestrated by Scarlett. I was stunned. Scarlett was pregnant too, my father added. She was released on bail but taken home by her family. Ethan didn't want her to keep the baby, so he secretly gave her something to induce a miscarriage. Scarlett lost her child the same way you lost yours. It drove her completely insane. In her madness, Scarlett came to my parents' house and set it on fire. Thankfully, my parents had stepped out. But I wasn't so lucky. Flames engulfed the house quickly, surrounding me in a fiery red glow. The air reeked of smoke, and my vision blurred. Outside, the sounds of sirens and shouting filled the air. Through the haze, I heard a familiar voice calling my name. "Man, wake up!" This voice, it was the same one I'd heard before my death in my previous life. Was I about to die again? Faintly, I felt someone break through the door. A figure in an orange uniform appeared, moving steadily toward me through the fire. He cradled me against his chest, his breathing strong and rhythmic. And he kept shouting, "Man, open your eyes!" The familiarity of his voice stirred something deep within me. "Who are you?" I murmured, struggling to keep my eyes open. "It's me, Kayla. Do you remember?" His voice was filled with urgency. "Don't fall asleep." I slipped into unconsciousness, and in my dreams, smoke swirled thickly around me. I was back in my school's storage room, trapped with a younger boy, a chubby child who was sobbing uncontrollably. The air grew heavier, and I realized he might choke on the smoke before help arrived. "Stop crying!" I shouted, smacking the back of his head. Startled, the boy's teary eyes widened, and he fell silent. "Now follow my instructions," I commanded. I removed the water bottle from his backpack, dampened our red scarves, and handed him one. "Cover your mouth and stay low. Follow me closely." The fire wasn't too intense, so I guided him through the smoke to the fire escape. Once outside, he ran to his parents, sobbing again. Before leaving, he grabbed my shirt. "Sister, my name is Kayla. Don't forget me." When I woke up in the hospital, the first people I saw were my parents. Tears streamed down their faces as they hugged me tightly, overjoyed that I had survived. "Mun," my father said, his voice trembling. "If we had lost you, your mother and I wouldn't have wanted to go on." I realized then how deeply my life was intertwined with theirs. In my previous life, their grief over my death led to their own passing not long after. This time, I vowed to protect the ones who truly loved me. A young man entered the room carrying flowers. It was him, the boy from the garage who had warned me. "Mun, this is Kayla, Mr. Kayla's son. He's the one who saved you. Don't you remember? He went to the same primary school as you before moving abroad with his father. He returned to China a few years ago and became a firefighter." Kayla had a bronze complexion, sharp features, and eyes that sparkled with warmth. His presence exuded strength and comfort. "Sister, have you stared enough? If not, I can come closer," he teased, flashing a playful grin. "It's you," I whispered. his voice striking a chord deep within me. "It's me," he confirmed. "I've come back too. In my past life, I stayed away, not wanting to interfere with your marriage. But in the end, you died in my arms. This time, I won't hold back. I want to stand by your side, love you, and protect you. I want to marry you." His words, though gentle, carried a resolute determination. Each sentence drew him closer, his eyes locking with mine. My heart wavered, but I remained silent. After living through 2 lifetimes, I wasn't ready to open my heart again. After I left the hospital, Kayla often visited me. One day, he shared the news. Scarlett had gone to Ethan while he slept, stabbed him to death, and then taken her own life. When they were found, Scarlett's body was clinging to Ethan's. The police struggled to separate them. Oddly, I felt no joy in their demise, only pity for Scarlett's obsessive and destructive love. Kayla continued visiting my family, always brightening my mother's mood. One day she made dumplings for him, saying, "He loves my dumplings. Take these to him while they're still warm." I brought them to his fire station. He was training when I arrived, but his serious demeanor melted into a wide smile when he saw me. Before he could approach, an alarm rang. "Wait for me," he called as he ran off. Later, I waited at the hospital, terrified when I saw Kayla unconscious. But when his colleagues revealed it was all a prank, I realized the depth of his feelings. Through tears, I promised, "I'll stay by your side, Kayla."